Hello, everyone. Welcome to I think this is the third episode of the Last Note podcast. I'm your host, Noah Jarrett, along with Preston Smith. And this podcast is brought to you by the Battery Archive, which is a private lesson studio geared towards helping you achieve any goals in the marching arts. And this podcast is devoted to providing current information from current performers in the marching and concert arts activity and providing you with how to navigate the post-COVID era of music. So with that, let me introduce our very special guest that we have here today. I've ever since we first talked about the idea of having a podcast, I've wanted to get this dude on here. He has a lot of experience in the arts and just a lot of large background, especially in the Texas area and with performing both indoor and outdoor. So this is Austin Benson. He is from Austin, Texas, and is currently pursuing a fire science degree with a firefighting certification. And he is a currently nationally registered EMT. He has marched with groups like Crossman in 2022, Phantom Regiment in 2023, and then we both marched together at Rhythmic Force in this season, and he also marched in 2024 as well. And he is also the bass drum section leader at RF. So please help us welcome our very special guest, Austin Benson.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Yes, sir. Just to kind of kick this off, give us a little. I know you've marched a bunch of groups. Just kind of give us a timeline of your kind of like what got you into music in high school, and then what really made you want to pursue it after high school and do drum corps and WGI and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, honestly, it started back in like elementary school, way back when. I started playing drum kit, did a couple rock bands, and eventually decided I wanted to go to Bowie High School and join the marching band. At that point, I ended up on drumline, ended up playing bass. Um, Ever since then, it's kind of stuck. Never wanted to switch instruments. Um, Somewhere, I think in 2019, I went to my first drum corps camp. I went to a Genesis and a Blue Knights audition camp. And at that point, I decided I wanted to actually do a season and march drum corps. Um, the goal at one point was to march finals by my age out, and ended up marching Crossman, March Regiment in 23, and kind of just went from there. Never had any plans of doing indoor. Just kind of happened, and here we are, year two, and there's technically two more, but we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, for sure. I can always say like at RF, like just being around you a lot, like you've been such like a good vibe and a good influence for the group, just like providing that spark whenever we're sometimes down in the dumps. And I I've heard that a lot about you. Is like your vibe is always like we're gonna keep pushing, we're gonna keep pushing, and y'all are always yelling on resets and just providing the necessary energy. And that's something that like at least coming into a group that I knew some people in the group, but coming into it and like coming into that kind of established vibe was something like it was so welcome, and it was truly awesome too. Um, Talk about what I know you marched Phantom in 23. So, and that was I kind of look at that show, that was kind of the platform because we all know what happened in 24.
Yeah.
But like, was it kind of different in 23? Like, or let me rephrase that. In 23, like, could you see the building blocks for what was going to happen in 24?
For sure, and not even, I wouldn't even say 23 might have been the platform. I would say it goes back to 21. Um, 21 kind of revitalized the Phantom Regiment. And from there, the amount of people wanting to march just grew and grew and grew. And every year since 2021, the turnout for auditions is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But something I do think that was kind of a stepping stone for Regiment was in 23, we brought on the new percussion staff, and that was different. We saw our own struggles with that, but it's a great team and they know what they're doing. It's just, first year is kind of, it is what it is, no matter what you're doing. So,
Yeah, we went through something really similar like that at Genesis too. Is we had the first year of that staff in 23. It was like these are people that are teching for drum corps for the first time. We obviously had Elliot and Mikey on the staff too, but the caption heads were raw. with not much experience, and so it was definitely a growing season. So I definitely can relate to that a lot. And then the success we had in 24 wouldn't have happened without the the foundations that were laid in 23. So, and that's definitely it's a tough battle. Like it
Yeah,
really is. It's but there's nothing like that relationship with the first time drum corps staff or like a new staff that's being put together with that first group of members. Because you can really feel the connection and like y'all laid the foundation for what's happening.
for
So
sure. And I mean, there's always the nice part of, with the staff change, you're going to see a lot of that retention kind of disappear. And
yeah,
so you got to start your own new culture. And everyone that came in 23, they knew what they were doing. They knew how to interact with each other, and they set everything up really well for 24, especially with the retention they had in 24.
yeah, for sure. I know Preston had, I mean, we talked about it before the 24 season, but I knew he had thoughts about maybe going to regiment because of what y'all had done in 23. Just because really, I mean, for me it was that trombone soloist, man. Like it's the one thing that I like always harp back to. And I think like when I think about regiment, I think about the Z pull in last year's show, and I think about that trombone soloist. And it's just that's what sticks.
Well,
Like
they had
I
it for
could,
3 years.
yeah, I know. But that one like signature moment,
Yeah,
just with the big hit right behind it, just oh, awesome. I've
it's great to perform
yeah, y'all are ramming some notes too.
from time to time. Yeah, we tried. We
Hey,
had a couple issues in the season, especially in the baseline, in terms of people not being there for reasons.
yeah,
But
that
you live it,
happens.
you get through it
Yep, it's a it's a drum corps is a long season, man.
for sure.
It's not perfect by any means. I had my fair share of injuries in 24, where I was out for a couple of days. I had a tech run into me, and
Oh,
it was a freak accident, but it put me out for a day or two,
yeah.
and it was shit happens. So, but yeah, um, let's see. We talked a little bit before this too. One thing I want to dive into, you talked about you went to a Genesis camp and a Blue Knights camp, your very first season, like going to audition somewhere. What, like, whenever you're going into, like, when you went into that first audition, like, what was your mindset? Like, did you even know what you're really getting into at the time?
It was the BK camp. That was the first camp I went to. I was asked to go out at the point, I think I was 15,
Hmm.
something like that. I was pretty young. It was my first camp, as I said, and I was still new to bass drum. That was my first season on bass drum, but I went out there and there was me and one other person. We had one tech, and it was pretty individual. Luckily, I was in a position where the tech was really nice. We went over stuff really slowly. We got to really build on our individual experience and how to get better at the instrument for the future. And I know with being that young, there's usually the challenge of groups are not going to want to take you for age. And
Yeah.
so that was my first time kind of getting to realize that because I went to the camp. They said they liked what they saw, but they're not going to take a 15-year-old on the line, especially after the season they just had. So,
Yeah.
but it was
Especially.
a little daunting at first for sure.
I
Especially
bet.
driving out to Houston, going all the way out there, being in a room with someone that you've seen march before. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But
What, so like whenever you went to that audition, was it Was it so? There's only two bass drummers at that camp.
there was only two bass drummers at that camp.
Wow.
Yeah,
So it was wow. That's
yeah.
pretty rare nowadays.
For sure. It was a satellite camp, and it was all
Gotcha.
gearing up to the indie camp that they had. To be fair, that is also, I wasn't auditioning for the 2019 season, I was auditioning for the 2020 season.
Mm,
And so I think that was right on the verge of whenever some of the COVID stuff started to happen. And so some people might have not wanted to go, or this, that, and the other. And so it was definitely different. That's for sure. I've never been at a camp afterwards where, there's two people and one tech.
yeah, truly. Um, I know that you brought up COVID too, and this is kind of a question I want to pose to everyone here is like, how did we navigate music? Or like, what made us want to continue in the marching arts after COVID? Because we all had some sort of like high school band or like we've seen drum lines or stuff like that before COVID. Like, what made us want to do that afterwards? Like, for me at least, it was the I don't know when this is ever going to be available again. Like you could kind of see like in the marching arts, like we're all sharing the same space, we're all sharing the same housing and everything, especially in drum corps. Like I knew that if I didn't go audition in 22 or 23, that I'm like, we don't know when this COVID thing could come back or anything like that. Like there's a chance it could die, and it was very close. I felt at least, but with some measures that were taken, obviously it was able to be saved. But I know, can you like elaborate on that, like, and what made you want to pursue it after COVID?
Well, like I was just saying, that was the first time I actually went to a drum corps camp. And so I had just gotten this big, you know, rush of wanting to march drum corps at some point. And it kind of made me a lot more motivated to keep going and keep practicing kind of in that time of lockdown. But on top of that, my high school, we decided we were going to do a show whenever we finally got back together, except the beats were like three times harder. Because at that point, you're not competing, you're not doing this, that, and the other, and it becomes a lot easier for you to just kind of try to get something out there and try to work really hard for something really cool. And so that also was really easy for all of us to kind of push for that. Not only to mention all the people on that same drum line, we tried to find times to meet up with each other whenever we could. As the lockdown kind of started to die down a little bit, we would go out to parks. We'd, social distance while drumming. And so that was interesting to get into. And it also was a skill that I think helped in terms of trying to find sound between each other across a lot larger space. But it was kind of a time for us to kind of push ourselves and see what we ourselves as students could find to motivate and push ourselves forward and learn more without, the supervision of somebody at all times. And so we all kind of just in this group push each other a lot further than we ever had. And that's something that kind of stuck the following years at my high school and even in some of the groups I marched. And it kind of, I don't know, it gave you another way to think about the entire activity.
For sure. Um, Preston, what did that look like for you? I know at least in the Oklahoma area, that was kind of what year did you get out of high school? Was it 21
Yeah,
ish?
21 when I graduated. So it was nearing the end of my junior year where actually it was 5 years ago today that everything like we got
Wow.
them. We're gonna have 2 extra weeks of spring break, but then like the Thunder were gonna play the Pacers or whoever it was, and they canceled the game, and then the NBA was like, we're suspending the season, and then everything just started falling apart. WGI canceled, and then I remember I think it was the Wednesday after spring break was. I remember waking up to seeing the official DCI cancellation, and I not of course that was the biggest tot in 2019. I'd like had active scores on my phone all the time. I would refresh them every night. I was like just looking to see who was going to win Blue Coats, Blue Devils. Oh my gosh, I was a little nerd. Now I'm just a big nerd, but no, it was definitely like during that time of lockdown where it was just everything was taken away, and I wanted to be a meteorology major leading up to that point. And I still love my weather every now and then, but that's kind of the moment where I realized uh, I I miss music. I need music, and then also kind of had a reevaluation of just what I enjoyed doing most, just at school. Like I got to run some like small percussion ensembles and stuff like that if we were just wanting to do, something for fun. And so it was that I enjoyed that. And so that's where I started kind of deciding I want to go into music. I want to be a percussion director. I want to do this for life. And yeah, that's kind of when I started taking it seriously. And I wish I had used more of my resources that I had during that time because we weren't terrible marching.
Recording in progress.
Oh, we're doubled up.
1 second. There we go.
Um, but yeah, we were really good concert percussion wise, but like marching wise, we just did our best. Um, so it was just one of those things I had to spend my first 2 years of college kind of correcting technique, but I just had this drive to like be to better myself to where I actually like did have a chance at making it. And then I auditioned for Genesis in 23, got a call back, went back, met Noah, and that the rest is history there. Loved it enough to come back. Uh, yeah, that's having all that time during COVID to really just think about what my priorities were and what I really wanted to do was a huge turning point.
For sure. Um, Kind of, you brought up going and auditioning post COVID too. I kind of want to talk about like what what do we think is the best way to approach an audition? I want to ask you specifically, Austin, too. Like what are some things that you would tell someone who's going to their first drum corps audition for maybe it wasn't for this coming season, or maybe they're reflecting on their time that they had it at camp this season. They may be like, oh man, I got cut. Like they just didn't want me. Like, can you talk about like the mentality that you need to have when you go to these kind of camps?
Yeah, for sure. By the way, just making sure, is the camera thing gonna work out fine?
Yep,
Okay,
yep, we're all good.
perfect. Um, yeah, with auditions, there's so many resources that you're given that a lot of people don't kind of utilize, and a lot of people don't really take the time to just think about. Um, Obviously, if you get cut from somewhere and you feel like that's the end of the road, um, there's some validity behind that. But at the same time, it's a time for you to grow, figure out what your weaknesses are, figure out how you can approach the off season in a way to improve or increase your chances for the next season. But also, you can talk to those techs and find out if maybe you might be better suited for a different group, or you might be better suited for a different style, or this, that, and the other. And a lot of those times, the techs make it clear to you that all you need to do is reach out. All you need to do is inquire about that stuff. And a lot of the times they'll send you to a group that maybe isn't a finalist or maybe isn't world class. But what it is I don't like using the word stepping stone, but it's a place for you to improve on everything that you're doing at a higher level than you already are, so that you go into the auditions the next season with a completely new set of skills, set of experience, set of just ideologies, ways to approach practicing, ways to approach a season. Usually it's a good chance for you to get better at reading music, learning music, memorizing stuff, marching better. It's just too many people kind of skip out on the part of auditions where you're not only always auditioning for one group at one camp. A lot
So
of the
true.
time you're auditioning for a certain style and they have connections to other groups that may be a little bit lower, but they play with the same style and the same approach. And the goal is for you to go there, have a good season, perform, get to do drum corps for a season, make sure it's for you, but also show up the next year with a better set of skills within the same exact, group that you're trying to audition for. And too many people kind of just skip out on that. And too many people take getting cut as just, I'm never going to be able to march this group, versus it's an opportunity for you to grind 2 times harder than everyone next to you.
Yeah. One thing I want to piggyback off of that is like, I know you mentioned like sometimes if you get cut from that Phantom Regiment, you get cut from that SCV and you get recommended to somewhere else, it's still world class or even open class, like take advantage of those connections. Like you don't want to just like you don't want that bridge to just die there. Like if they're giving you an opportunity, utilize it. Like, cause
Yeah.
not everyone's reaching out and wanting those kind of opportunities. And like, you can still get a great drum corps experience. I never marched the top 12. Never, I didn't have the intentions of marching a top 12 after my first season. Like, I started that way. Like, I had my goals. I had my goals. I had my aspirations. I wanted to go to Carolina Crown. That was my dream corps. That was what I wanted to do. But I I valued the culture and the vibe, and I valued my staff too, because I was like, I can get a lot better. I can still get better from learning from the staff for a second season. Like, and you don't always like, you can learn different things, but at the end of the day, they're going to tell you when you're ticking. So, and these educators in the activity in world class, no matter where you go, there's going to be a high level of knowledge. And like, that's something that people take for granted. Like, you're going to get a high level of education at the Blue Coats. You're going to get a high level of education at Genesis. You're going to get a high level at Seattle Cascade, Music City, Spirit of Atlanta. You just name all of them off. All of them have great percussion staffs that care a lot about the activity and that have done it before. So,
For sure.
yeah. I I just really that whenever someone tells me like, man, I didn't make that top three group, it just bogs me that they don't want to go pursue somewhere else, but they don't know any better. That's one of the goals here too, is like, we got to provide um, content from people of all groups. Like, that's the experience at a bottom five world class group is still great.
For
Like,
sure.
you'll learn so much. And no matter, even if you think you're the best in the world, you can go to one of those groups that's hungry, and or not everyone is the best of the best. But the thing that made me want to stay is we were so hungry to be good, and I strived that. Then that's what I used to motivate my age out. Is like, I don't care about the placement. I just care about getting clean and getting good. And watching the videos from day one to finals, that's the rewarding part.
For
Mhm.
sure.
Seeing the growth and like chasing the growth and not chasing a number.
Yeah. I mean, that's something I don't even talk about too much, but I didn't start off at Crossman. That wasn't my first independent experience. I started off at a sound sport group in Austin or in Texas. And while it was a rough season, it was right after COVID. We didn't compete in any drum corps shows. Um, Something I did get to go through is I got to go through the hardest part of a tour. I got to go through all of spring training with significantly less shows, but with a staff that did have the same experience as, some of those higher groups. The entire staff was basically just people that have marched VIP or Phantom Regiment or maybe a couple other groups. And, within all realms of talking about it, they kicked our ass. And there's something to enjoy about that, and there's
Oh
something to
yeah.
get out of it. And to walk out of a season where you're just getting beat down all the time in a way of trying to get way cleaner, it makes you appreciate the activity more. But on top of that, you go to another group where they're not doing that as much, and it becomes a lot easier. And
Oh yeah.
so, something I talk about a lot is every single time I went to another group, the seasons got easier, the music got harder, the staff got a little bit more laxed. But that's something that they expect from you as you go up to those higher groups as well. Is at some point it's going to be led by you and not by the
Yeah.
staff.
We're definitely having that. We're kind of having that moment at RF right now. It's definitely like, I mean, we've heard all the information. We've played every part of the book at a top 10 level of clean. We just got to do it.
Yeah,
And there's
got to do
no
it
other,
all together.
there's no other way around it. Like, we have the engine, but we got to put the diesel in it. We got
For
to make
sure.
it turn. We got to make it turn 5,000 RPMs. And if we're only giving it 3,500 and we're not stepping on the gas all the way, what are we doing?
Yeah. Well, branching off of that as well, you know, something I've noticed a lot, especially in the past two seasons, is maybe it's not something I thought about as much beforehand, is the idea of, you know, rehearsing how you're going to perform. It is so easy to fall into the trap of you got to lock in on show day. You got to lock in for this, that, and the other. And while that's true in some respects, to make sure you're not, you know, getting a little bit too amped up or getting too much adrenaline from it, there's also something to be said that you're not at rehearsal all the time, just completely locked in, just completely nothing is phasing you. I mean, something that I've started to preach, and this might be a very small group of people that would think about it this way, but if you're going to be goofy in rehearsal, be goofy at the show. Now, that doesn't mean you're walking around the show being, you know, doing all this, that, and the other, but what you need to do is if you're going to approach your lots and you're going to approach your shows the same way you're going to rehearse, if you're being goofy in rehearsal, do the same thing at a show.
Yeah.
Um, it's something that I think if you get really good at, you'll not only be better at your shows, you'll be better in rehearsal, and you're going to get more out of both. Because if you're only locking in for shows, you're not getting the most out of your rehearsals. If you're, you know, locking in for rehearsals and then you're kind of letting it go at shows, you're not getting the most out of your shows because you're changing things. You can be 10 times better if you kind of keep a consistency there, versus, you know, you're doing everything different on the show day.
Yeah, and especially for me at least, my motivation fact that I use every day when we're at RF or even at drum corps is like we only have, I think at RF it's like 12 days left of rehearsal
Something like that.
until we're at Dayton, and two of those, I think two of them are or three of them are show
Three
days.
of them are shows.
So we got the Dallas and championships, and then the send off show.
Yeah.
Like we don't have much days to get cleaner. You have to max it out every minute, every like step of the way. It just has to be 100%. And if you're not doing it for yourself, do it for the people next to you. Like
Mhm.
like you, if you're not at 100% and they're giving 100%, like even on Forte Athletics, as much as I did not like doing those workout plans, he posted something yesterday that was like, that's real shit. Like these are like the five things that like are truly a big factor in like staying motivated and like why you do the activity. And it really hit home with me yesterday. I'm like, dang, we have 12 days left. That's it. And like it just has to be go mode the whole time. And I know it hit me hard in the age out too whenever we got to Atlanta. I kind of had that moment of like, there's 2 weeks left. Fuck. Like
Yeah.
it's we gotta go. There's no no time left. So
Before or after the stick fell during eights?
oh shit. Dude,
Feels
I'm
like a
talking about
before moment.
like no, it was after. It was after. It was when we were in the tunnel.
Yeah.
But yeah, like second note of eights in the full battery, my stick, I tap it off, like and the first note after the tap, my stick goes pew.
Hey, but I am proud of the line because we didn't break. The sound didn't.
Sounded
Nothing.
break.
It was just
I just kind of looked at there and I was like, well, oh well,
Yeah, there's nothing you can do. Just let it
no,
fly.
there's nothing. And like another thing too, the lot. This is something I want to talk about too. The lot is a very, it's deceptive in a lot of ways. It gets it gets hyped up, but you have to be just like Austin was talking about. You have to put yourself the same way in the lot. Like you have to put your headspace in the lot the same way you put it in the show. You can't, and you have to train yourself to block out all of the external factors. So, can you talk about some things you do whenever you go to a lot? When you know there's going to be cameras, I mean, you've been there. You've been to DCI finals. You've seen the innovative percussion videos. You've seen the R-Bass 311s, the drumline AVs, when they're all in front of you at one time. What are some things that you do to keep your head in a calm space?
You know, that's not something I think I've ever actually thought about, and I don't think it's something I've ever actually put much thought into in the moment. But I think one simple thing that I do is you can't just ignore it, because at some point something's going to happen, something's going to change, and it's just going to break through everything. I think it's a better idea to acknowledge that they're there and then realize the show is for the people around you. And all of a sudden you find that tree, you find something in the distance, you start playing, and then this ties back into like if you're going to be goofy in rehearsal, whatever. The second you get out of that rep, you turn to the person next to you and you just have fun.
Yeah,
Um, and if you do get a moment to talk to people, go talk to them. But it's finding a way to kind of supplement all of that outside of the reps, so that whenever you're inside of the reps, you're not worrying about anything. You drop your stick in the middle of the lot. The question shouldn't be, oh, did somebody see that? The question should be, all right, how am I going to figure this out? Do I have a drop mallet? Do I not? Do I need to switch hands or something? Should I go grab it? The first reaction should not be about the people watching you.
for sure.
Um,
We
so
gotta switch to the next meeting here in a sec.
Get that.
So
I'll get that set up real quick.
okay, so we'll hop off here. I'm gonna for
But
sure.
as we get back into this, something I do want to bring up. So you marched Crossman in 22, and then went on to Phantom, and then RF, and through going a bunch of different places, you meet a lot of different people. And so, like, you marched with some of the guys I went to school with, Bernie Moore, Alex Price. Um, just talk about how like going to all these different corps has led you to just have connections and networking opportunities with both inside and outside of music.
yeah, no, marching at a lot of different places has its ups and downs. Obviously, you meet a lot of people, you march with a lot of people. You march with some people that maybe you don't want to march again, or people that you really want to march with again. But there's this, that, and the other. But um, something that I've definitely tried to do a lot more recently, and something I think I at least did somewhat at the groups I marched at earlier on, such as Crossman and in high school, is try to just have the best bond with the people around you. Because I would always preach, especially on a baseline, if you don't like necessarily the person behind you, or if you have beef with the person behind you, you're probably not going to play very well.
Mhm.
Because especially in the bass world, it's not as simple as you're playing a rhythm that the same person is playing next to you, which has its own challenges. But you can be so stubborn about playing a specific split a specific way, and you can kind of mess up how everything sounds. And so I've always tried to at least keep a good vibe with almost everyone I've marched with. And coming out of that, Bernie, for instance, you go to school with him, and I marched with him at Crossman. He was my seat buddy. One of the coolest guys I think I've ever marched with. Like, if I could have marched with him again in 23, I would have. Now, obviously, I went to a different group, and I had my reasons for that, and he had his reasons for going back to Crossman. But um, one of the coolest people I know, and so I still reach out to him from time to time because I'll have people I know that I want to send out to Crossman or this, that, and the other, and I want to send them out to there, or I'll reach out to some of the guys I marched on baselines with at Crossman, such as Alex. And just ask a quick question, or the regiment baseline. We randomly might just hop into a call at some point, and then we're on a call for 4 hours. Um, they're all great people who are all doing completely different things in life, and you're not doing the season with them anymore. But something you have to realize is you all went through the same 3 months of hell. That's a bond you're never going to have with anyone else. And so, in a way, they're kind of like, I don't want to say necessarily family, but they kind of are. And um, over time, you start to learn that you can reach out to them, you can lean on them, you can be like, hey, let's go hang out, or you want to make some plans to go do something. Especially with regiment, ghost base. A majority of the people get the ghost base tattoo on their right shoulder, and so we have our own little culture there, and you'll just see random people that you've never really seen in your life, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, I marched Ghost Base back and blah blah blah," and all of a sudden you have this connection, and you can start to reach out to them and talk to them. And there's people I met on the 23 season whenever I was still marching that had marched back in the 2010s or even just the 2000s. And, it makes it very easy to talk to them. But even at RF, two of the base staff marched regiment, one in 2011 and one in 2019. And so I was able to go into that audition room and it was like I already knew them. And it made it really easy for us to understand things, talk about things. We had a lot of similarities between seasons, a lot of differences between seasons at the same core. And, we've kind of grown closer simply because of that fact. And so in terms of, connections with people, it's very easy as long as you're enjoying the season and you're making the people around you enjoy it as well. Um, to be able to just reach out to people about random things, especially in the percussion world with, Percussive Arts Society and what is it, TMEA and all of that stuff. It's really easy. You can just go meet people, hang out for a bit, and you can always talk randomly. And there's all these different channels with which you can communicate and still, banter or just have serious talks about things. It's really nice.
What I know you talked about this, and I really want to dive into this a little bit. The vibe of a section. What are some of the things that you've been a section leader RF now for 2 years? You got that kind of established culture in the baseline. And y'all have had a lot of vet retention. I mean, 4 of the 5 coming back from the year before. What has that process been like to maintain the same standard and the same vibe from year to year, but only changing one member of that? Has it made it easier?
Um,
Has it made it harder?
Indoor is a very special case. I think with outdoor, it's a little bit easier to kind of go about things because you kind of just get thrown into fire day one with everybody, whereas indoor, you're still living your lives. You're doing this, that, and the other. But with RF, I think we've had a lot of success where all of us love the group. We love playing with each other. Obviously, we're going to have days where we're really tired or days where people are getting really upset about things really easy. And so we kind of, as a group, have had some talks to make sure that we communicate. We make sure to communicate about issues quicker than later. And, we even have a word to make sure we know we're not just bantering or having bits. Um, we've put in a lot of kind of thought to make sure that we can have conversations that might not be as easy, but need to be had so that we can show up to rehearsal either the next week or the next day or literally the next block and just start fresh again. And I think that's something we do pretty well. Is we show up to each block kind of with a new idea of how things are going to go without kind of looking at a specific person and being like, oh, this is how this day is going to go. Um, and it's been really nice. And going in with the thing of having one new member, um, it's just kind of it was established day one that this is our vibe, and you're kind of walking into it, and we don't want you to feel like you have to necessarily change your entire being to enter the line. We want you to still be you, but also understand that us four have already kind of figured out how we interact with each other.
Yeah.
And it's something that was also talked about a couple of times just to make sure there's an understanding of, you are newer. We don't want to make you feel like you're not part of the line, but at the same time, we're going to have to get used to some things. You're going to have to get used to how we operate from time to time. It's a thing where we've already established as us four, and we're kind of trying to get him in with how we operate and try to understand how he operates so we can kind of mold it in a way where it's going to be a little bit more balanced towards the four of us, but we're also not just going to say this is how things are. Sorry, because that's not how life
Yeah.
it's all five of us. We're all part of the line, no matter vet retention or leader status. Us five make the line. So
Okay. So just to kind of wrap up, I always like to end with this kind of thing where I ask you. So if you're going to give a piece of advice to a bass drummer, well, let's call him Timmy. He's 10th grade in high school. 10th grade Timmy, he's playing bass drum. He's maybe playing, I don't know, any drum in high school. He's thinking about maybe doing college or DCI or WGI. What piece of advice would you give him for pursuing that after high school?
Go to an audition and not just go to one, go to multiple auditions. Something that is nice about auditions is you can learn how to be good at them. Um, just auditioning for a group, it's not like, oh, well, that's something, and next time I do, it's going to be the exact same. Um, some groups might be packet groups, some groups might not, and so you can go to a camp and you can force yourself to sight read everything, which might not be the best idea in order to try and make the line. It's something that I've definitely done before to try to get better at sight reading. It puts yourself in a little bit more of an area of stress, but at the same time, you're building a skill that you don't usually build as much because you can usually sit down and learn an entire packet over the course of a few months. Um, Go to auditions, talk to the staff, see if there's any other group that they think you might be fitting for. If not, just get a bunch of feedback because that's what they're there for, and have those conversations. I mean, if they think that you might be in a pretty good spot, you just happen to be one or two out, and they want you to come back the next year, don't just be like, oh, well, I don't want to do it anymore. Usually, those people, whenever they see you for a year, if you go back the next year, you're coming in with this idea of this is how they were last year, and if you've made a significant improvement, they're going to see it, they're going to notice it, they're going to try and work with it. Um, a lot of groups operate in the sense of if you audition for more than 1 year, you're kind of seen as this person that's really working for something, and so it's not something to just throw away. Um, that's not to say you can't go to another camp or this, that, and the other, but the big thing is just go to camps, get the experience, learn how it is, talk to the vets, talk to the staff, talk to new people that are also auditioning themselves, and just work through all of it. Just communicate. It's the easiest thing to do that nobody does.
Yeah, and like for at least me going to RF, like if I wouldn't have marched at Genesis and went and auditioned there, I wouldn't have known Mikey and Elliot. And that was the whole reason I ended up at RF. So it all kind of just it kind of works itself out. Like once you get in the community and you got to be first of all you have to be bold enough to reach out to the people because even if you're not in a group, you can still make connections with staffs
For sure.
and they will value that a lot. And just a simple reach out can mean a spot at another group potentially, or at least an
Yeah,
opportunity. So never take those relationships for granted.
for
So
sure.
yeah. Well, this has been great. I also want to say this too. I'm gonna tag all of us in these videos on social media too. Please, if you have any questions just about drum corps life or anything, reach out to us. Like we will be willing to answer questions about it if you have questions about how did we do it? How did like what are some things that you can do to work on to get into these groups? Like just any drum corps related questions, any life related questions about how we manage this post COVID era of marching. So we've all done it now. We have experience. Just don't be afraid to reach out. So
Yeah.
this has been great, y'all. I'm super happy that we had Austin on here today. Um, we have some OU friends coming next week. It's gonna be a good time. Some goofballs, but we'll get into some more of the concert percussion webs next week as well. So we'll kind of start dabbling into that a little bit more, and I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to RF this weekend. It's gonna be fun. Um, Still cranking. Got another weekend in Dallas. Do what?
I gotta purchase my Flow subscription. I gotta be watching.
Dude,
Yeah,
Dallas Regional is gonna be cranking. So we're
that's
coming
a
in
good
there with
start
some heat.
for sure.
So all right. Take care, y'all. Austin, I'll see you this weekend. Preston, we'll catch up.
Yep.
So it's been great. See y'all.
Yeah,
See
thanks for
ya.
having me.
No problem.